wanna be healthy, you wanna be shine. I know there's a long road, but you gotta just climb. Mentally, physically, spiritually, fit world. Mentally, physically, don't you give up. Mentally, physically, spiritually, fit. Mentally, physically, spiritually, yeah. Mentally, physically, spiritually, fit world. Mentally, physically, spiritually, fit. Mentally, physically, spiritually, fit world. Mentally, physically, spiritually, fit.
Hello, family, and welcome back to another episode of Live Today Health Talk. So, family, today I am definitely going to be getting into our health, definitely sharing a little bit of science. So, I'm going to try not to take away too much from the health message. But in doing so, I'm going to be talking some nerdy stuff. I'm going to get down to the cells because I'm going to share a personal story with you and how my lab work, when I always tell you guys, ask your doctor for your lab work. So how my lab work impact me personally and something that I had to study and get with my nutritionist and just dig down into the cell level to see what was going on. One of the things that was going on with me during that time that we had to stay at home. All right, so before I get too far into the lesson, I'm going to ask you, as always, we want to pray and share our scripture. Then I'll come for our disclaimer, since I am sharing some information with you today, and we'll get into our discussion. Okay, so meanwhile, please like and share, invite somebody, because this is going to be very interesting. Okay, all right, please join me in a prayer. Most gracious and heavenly Father, as always, we thank you. We thank you on this day for allowing us to share your health message, for giving us the understanding, for the information, for the science, and even the technology that allows this broadcast to stream into the many, many countries, nations, and cities and states that it does touch. To all the people that need to hear it, may it touch them. May it perk their ears to listen in a little closer. And may they even say, I think I need to do that also. So, Father, as always, I ask that you download into me. And what's not for me to share, I won't go there. I know I may have a plan here, but you take over this lesson plan. So, in Jesus' name, I thank you. I thank you. Amen. All right, so our scripture for today is coming out of the U version, and it's Psalms 103, verse 13, King James Version. And it reads, Like as a father pitieth his children, so the Lord pitieth them that fear him. And I will say, our bodies are fearfully and wonderfully made. He designed our bodies to operate almost basically on their own. He designed our bodies so that they would heal, so that they could function, and so that we could live. And He gave us everything on this planet that we need to do so. So today, I'm going to be sharing with you from the Energetic Health book and Volume 1, Interesting Insights into Advanced Natural Medicine. And I'm going to read some inserts from that book. And if you're familiar with the book, and I need to go back to, I apologize, Dr. Henley, if you're familiar with his training, his message, his any of his books, because he has other books out, then please, if you have this one, then turn with me to chapter 4. We're going to be talking about the mighty mitochondria. I told you we're going down into the cell level. All right. So before I do so, let me back up and say yesterday we had a wonderful time with the Band-Aid Project. We had so many young Marines, active duty members, veterans, and even students from George Mason University, and some stopped by from the Catholic University. All right. So CUA. All right. And it was just a wonderful time. I couldn't stay for the whole thing, so I missed part of it, but I was able to get the young people started, set up some of the teams, and they got to work. So I didn't see the finished product, but I will, because, that just inspired us to make sure that we do another one, to see the collaboration, to see the team cohesiveness, to see the multi generations come and work together. We had children, we had mothers, fathers, grandparents, you know what I mean? Not to mention, so we had the different generations, then we had them all working together. So it doesn't mean that each family had to work together, because we split people up and just made teams so that we would have one of each, a youth, a active duty member, and a veteran, and then another facilitator from the college, all there. And again, they just blended well, and they Charlie Mike completed the mission, right? So that was wonderful. Okay, so now I'm at a kind of a stalemate with our Women Veterans Committee meet and greet. All right, so I need your help here. Pray. All right, because I'm not getting a confirmation for next month, and then the event, the venue for October has been postponed. They want to push it for next quarter, and it's going to be cold. And I know our sessions are going to be starting, so hopefully my schedule will allow us to continue, you know what I mean, and that the momentum won't die down. So meanwhile, I need confirmation for next month for Prince George's County, and then we need confirmation for something else in October for either Anne Arundel County or Cecil County, if they're still willing to do so. But we're going in every county. That's what we said we were going to do. And if you know me, that means we're going to do it. Before this year is out, we will have visited all of our counties to bring our women veterans out to meet one another, to talk about some things that are going on in our lives, and to help one another, to help us make it through it, to help us find the resources that we need. And later on this month, we're going to be having a meet and greet for CT Eldom Group. And we're going to do another collaborative effort with our youth, some historians, educators, some other nonprofits, even a group that's doing a playwright. Family, you know what? God is good. And as He brings all these things to us, I just need your prayers to pray that we are prosperous and that we will be able to share our educational events, our classes, and even maybe our play right here on Streaming Broadcast Inspirational Network. All right. So we are looking forward to increase, and all from our Father. So they say when praises go up, blessings come down. So pray with me, praise with me, and let's do a hallelujah dance when we're done, okay? So enough of that. Let me move into our topic for today. So while we were on a lockdown, without using the C word or the P word, right? While we were doing on the lockdown, a lot of us started having health problems. So I won't say, and I'm not claiming that, to say that I started having health problems, but the weight started coming, right? Because I wasn't being as active, and I didn't notice the weight as in the scale or the weight is in joints hurting, but I noticed clothes fitting a little differently, because not just was it the lockdown, but it was a phase of age that I was going through. And they say when you go through that phase, those hormones slow down, the metabolism slows down, your movement slows down, and your body starts processing things differently. So I guess I reached that age where that midsection decided to increase. And so when I started putting on my work clothes again, I was like, oh my goodness, what's going on? So I started doing fasting, doing fast on my own. And I started saying, okay, you got to get back to your workouts. I don't care whether you're in or out, whether you go outside, whether you work out on the inside, but you make sure you work out 5 days a week, right? Because you're no longer being as active as you were. I mean, when we were going to work, we were walking and I was running and then going to the gym and I can't really run, but you know what I mean, trotting, jogging, whatever, and then going to the gym, just different things. Even the movement to get there was counted as movement, right? And all that just came to a halt. Okay. So when all of that came to a halt, I know a lot of us didn't realize it. It's like, wow, I'm only walking from the bedroom down to the office, or I'm only walking from the office to the living room. You know what I mean? And the steps decreased tremendously. So I had to start doing things like, okay, let's pull the elliptical back out. Let's pull the treadmill back out. But it still wasn't enough because I would say, okay, at 12 o'clock, I'm going to take my break and I'm going to work out. And that would be it. And then I say, okay, well, I worked out for the day and not understand why I wasn't getting that balance there. What was going on with my energy drain and some other things. And it was like with the nutritionist, we sat down. I started doing the logs. I started doing the logs of not just what I was eating, when I was eating, and when I was also moving. And come to find out, I was really only moving once a day, and that was the workout. But I wasn't doing my normal treks, around the building or, just going places. All of that has stopped. Then we also noticed that I had cut back on my meals, and started, before I even started the fasting, thinking, okay, you don't deserve no snacks no more in between meals because that's more food and you're not moving. And to me, it just didn't equal, it didn't calculate properly to say you can't have those. Before, when I was so active during the day, you would have those 6 meals. You know what I mean? They teach you the 6 meals. So you eat your meal, you have the snack in between, you eat your meal, have the snack in between. And that way you're constantly going. And I was like, I don't deserve no snacks. And as a matter of fact, we say put that heaviest meal during the day, try not to have it at night. Well, was doing that and cutting out the snacks. But what the nutritionist told me, that's enough of my story, right? So let me move forward. When we did my lab work, we looked at my lab work and it's like, no, you don't have any of the autoimmune diseases, but you could be on the verge of something if you don't start watching these numbers here. And I'm like, okay, well, what do I need to pay attention to? So start reading your labels, Tiffany. Go back to reading your labels. So I'm like, okay, I'm reading my labels. Well, guess what? Since we couldn't go to the store as much, I had started buying frozen food, right? So I could put it in the freezer, keep it longer. And that way, as you go to the store, you see your shelves empty, or you go and try to get your fresh produce and it's just not there, or it's just going bad so fast. I mean, so it wasn't even lasting a whole week. And it's like, oh, it's just me eating it and it's bad in like 3 days. So I started buying frozen food. I will tell you, if you don't read those labels, the biggest culprit on that frozen food, well, let me back up. Two biggest culprits. First one was the sodium. Frozen food, family. Frozen food, the sodium numbers are outrageous, even on vegetarian food. I don't think I saw one below 200, but a simple meal, one lunch could have been almost 700 oh my goodness, milligrams in sodium. And I hope I used the right unit. Please forgive me if I didn't, but just the number alone. And I'm like, oh my goodness, that's almost all the sodium that I'm allowed to accumulate in one day. Now, let's go to the carbs. Okay, let's go to the carb one. Again, how many carbs do you allow yourself per day? Well, that one meal would have cost me all. And I'm like, oh my goodness. So if I eat this today, I can't have anything else to eat. You better just drink bread. I mean, just drink water and eat bread, right? And call it a day. And that's basically what I was doing because I was looking at my labels, which is what I was taught to do. As you know, as a nutritionist, as a health professional, you read your labels and you look at what you're consuming. Well, what I found out was when I got to the nutritionist and we started looking at my numbers, she's like, Tiffany, you're starving yourself. And I'm like, well, I'm eating 3 meals a day. Yeah, but what are you eating? What I was eating, even though I was buying vegetables, all right, I apologize, family. I don't know what I hit. But anyway, so yeah, even though I was buying frozen vegetables, I was buying frozen meals, and looking at the pictures and making sure we had vegetables in it and all that. It was like because of the sodium, the carbohydrates, and the choices that I was making, we started looking at the content. Okay. We started looking at the content and saying, I was eating, but my body wasn't getting fed. Then can you quite understand what I'm saying here? I was eating my meals. I was looking at my labels on, calories wasn't the biggest issue. It was what to stay away from, the carbs and the sodium. And I was looking at my labels, looking at the vitamins, and so on and so forth. But yet I was starving my body. And here's why. Certain things, because of the numbers and because of the bad numbers, I'll call them bad numbers, right? Because of the bad numbers I was taking in, certain things, the bad numbers were blocking certain things that needed to get through from the good numbers, if you're following me. So I was nutritionally, I was on a nutritional deficit, if you can understand what I'm saying. My cells weren't being fed. So the blockers were in the way. Okay. The blockers were in the way. So from decreasing the movement, then the diet, then so yeah, if it had maintained, I would have crossed over more than likely, I'll say, into having some type of autoimmune deficiency or high blood pressure or something. You know what I mean? But so that's what when the nutritionist told me I wasn't, I wasn't getting the nutrients that I needed, then we went to find out why, what was going on. And we found out that not just the age, but the sedentary lifestyle and then the meals were all causing this because the cells within my body weren't able to operate or replenish the way in which they were used to or they used to, you know what I mean? And I can attribute most of that to age, but I will say that yeah, over 50 with the over 50 crew, and these are things we have to look out for. I will also say that the lifestyle didn't help. So I'm going to share with you some of what I learned about ourselves today. Okay, let me check my time. So the first one is I want to talk about the mitochondria. All right. So the mitochondria first is the number of mitochondria per cell varies depending on the type of cell and the functions that it designs. But the mitochondria has something to do with our metabolism, our energy, and our movement. So, of course, if I said energy, then it has something to do with our movement. And of course, the metabolism, right? how we process it, how our body processes it, and then gives us what we need. So the number of mitochondria per cell will also vary based on the availability of fuel. And that fuel comes from the glucose and glucose derivatives. Now, again, if you're diabetic or on the verge of being diabetic or just trying to make sure you stay away, you're going to be counting your fats, your saturated fats, your trans fats, and yada, yada, yada. And you're going to be looking at the carbs and how the carbs turn into glucose too. And all you know is you want to stay away from the sugar, okay? Things that turn into sugar. So essentially, nutrients for energy production and oxygen. So finally, the numbers of mitochondria per cell will vary based on, and this was another thing, with the age. And I won't even say it has to be with the age. This is another thing that we were going through while we were on lockdown, was based on our stress levels. And now that was out of my control. But I had to learn how to take all that back, because the movement, the food, the lack of, nutrition, and then the stress all started try to bombard my system. And I won't just say in the brain, but the digestive system. See, it all has to do with the digestive system. Remember, I always say about the relationship and the communication between the brain and the gut, right? The brain and the gut. So your physical activity and the genetic integrity of your individual DNA play a big part in this. And that's right. So the mitochondria within your cells have their very own DNA structure. All right. So this means that at one point in every evolutionary history, they were a part of us. And this is called the mitochondria. So what they found out is what your body already knows, is that we work incredibly well together. We give them energy in the form that they need. When I say they, I'm talking about the cells, right? And in turn, they give us energy in the form that we need. And that just makes a wonderful partnership and a reciprocal relationship. But the relative population of mitochondria per cell can range from as little as one to as many as several thousand per cell. Some researchers report that there are as many as 10,000 mitochondria per cell in certain tissues, right? And a typical tissue will host between 200 and 400 mitochondria, which this is typically for some of our major organs, like our liver or our heart and our muscles and kidneys, right? So when my body wasn't getting the proper nutrition that it needed, do you see where I'm going? Then my body wasn't able to give my part of the partnership for my cells to be replenished. And you guys need, look, I don't want to stop preaching here, but you need to hear me now, okay? Because these are things going on in our bodies that we don't even realize. Oh, and I forgot to say our kidneys. So hosting between 1,000 to 5,000 mitochondria per cell, though that's the more important the function, the greater the need for energy. You get me? So if I wasn't doing the things to increase the energy that these cells needed for these organs, and I just said some major organs, when I'm talking about the heart, the liver, the kidney, you know what I mean? These major organs, then what happens? Family, if we don't feed, if we don't eat properly or move properly to produce the energy that these cells need to feed into these organs, what's going to happen? You know it. And that's how we start getting into these autoimmune diseases, because those organs will start to become damaged and possibly even start to shut down. So the more mitochondria is needed per cell, depending on the importance of the organ. Help me out, Father, so I can break this into layman's terms for anyone that's listening that's not following me to understand. So, for instance, it's estimated that mitochondria make up approximately 20% of our liver cells, total weight, and an even higher percentage of our heart cells, total weight. So the point is that your body, with the essential assistance of the mitochondria, is designed to produce vast amounts of energy in the form of what you may hear your doctors say called ATP. And that is a Indenosin trephosphate. Trifosfat. And you know what? I'm going to let us listen to this on a video so this doctor, Dr. Berg, can explain it to you better. Okay? Stand by.
Hey guys, I wanted to create a little video on your cells, okay, because it can be very complicated. I'm going to try to simplify it, all right? Okay, so there's various parts of the cell. It's like a universe. There's all sorts of things happening. You have the center part, which is called the nucleus, okay? And in the nucleus, you have what's called DNA. So the DNA is basically going to give the program to tell what the rest of the cell should do, as far as what body tissue to make and what actions to perform. Then we have what's called the RNA. Now there's 3 different kinds, but just to simplify it, you can look at the RNA as a copy of the DNA. You have a copy machine in your cells. So it makes a copy of the code, and then it pastes it into certain transport units that send it out through the rest of the cell. So just like a computer programmer that would write his certain code and then maybe cut and paste it into a different thing to make a website, your body has the RNA to do that as well. Now what's even more amazing is the DNA and the RNA could have over 10,000 errors every single day, from things like radiation to chemicals to things that oxidize the cell, free radical damage, etc., etc. But we have an entire repair unit in the cell, okay, that can go in there like a proofreader, read the code, translate the code, and look for errors. Then what it will do, it'll cut out the section of errors, cut it out, replace it with new one, or fuse it together. And then there's another proofreader unit that comes behind the initial proofreader to make sure they didn't make any errors, to look and read the code to make sure it's exact. And they also have the capacity to cut out the bad code, put in the new code, and replace it to the point where you can reduce the errors to 1 in a billion. This is incredible, because if these errors are there, you have these mutations, which are alterations in the code, and that can lead to cancer and a lot of other diseases. Okay? Next thing we're talking about is the mitochondria. The mitochondria is the energy factory of the cell. It takes your food, mixes oxygen, and it produces energy. And in the body, the energy is called ATP. It's kind of like an energy currency. And then you have something called the endoplasmic reticulum, which is the part of the cell that either makes protein if it's the rough part, or makes lipids or steroids if it's the smooth part. Because a lot of your body tissue is composed of fat and protein. Hair, nails, brain, nerve, etc. So this is one part of the assembly line in the manufacturing of body tissue. And then we have these little things called ribosomes, which are basically protein-making machines on steroids. So they actually help in making different protein structures, not just for body parts, but for body chemicals like hormones and neurotransmitters, blood cells, you name it. Then we have something called the Golgi apparatus, okay? The Golgi apparatus is similar to the post office, or you probably order things from Amazon. Well, they have a whole shipping department where they package the item that you bought, and then they put a scanning code on it. They tag it. Well, that's what this unit does. The Golgi apparatus packages and tags protein and fat to then be shipped out to the other parts. Then we have something called the lysosome, which is basically the digestive stomach. It's the garbage disposal. It helps break down waste, and it also breaks down damaged parts to be recycled. Okay, so there's another term called autophagy, where you would be going on a long fast with doing intermittent fasting, and you would cause the lysosome to start recycling the damaged proteins that are unusable, maybe from the repair pathways, and also microbes to then recycle those into new particles so we can reuse that. So it's very, very efficient. That's what the lysosome does. And then we have something called the peroxisome, which is a slightly different, it's similar, but this cell makes enzymes to get rid of something called peroxides, okay? So if you were to use hydrogen peroxide, for example, to clean a wound, you could see that it fizzes up because it kills all the microbes. It kind of disinfects it. Well, your white blood cells also make hydrogen peroxide to kill viruses and bacteria. Well, we don't want to let that lingering around, so this little guy here cleans all that stuff up. So our bodies actually make oxidants or free radicals to kill things, and you can also have it coming from the outside as well. And that's why you can consume antioxidants, and also your body makes antioxidants as well to balance this whole thing out. And lastly, we're going to talk about the membrane. The membrane is like a double layer of fat that surrounds the cell. And when you take vitamins, you have two types. You have water soluble and you have fat soluble. The fat soluble vitamins are different in that they can cross this fat layer and go to the nucleus and create effects. All right, so there you have it. That's the simplicity of a cell. Thanks for watching. So we've been getting a lot of success stories, but I don't have your success story yet. So click the link down below and upload your before and after. I want to actually hear about your success story. I want to see your before and afters. And every week we do featured success stories. So click the link down below and share your success.
All right. So hopefully that helped with the, by him drawing it and explaining it to you. He broke it down a little bit better, a little bit more. He's the doctor, the medical doctor. I am not, okay? Not in the medicine. But I share the health message because I'm a doctor for education, and it's my job to educate you so you'll know. And I owe Dr. Berg another success story because years ago, Dr. Berg helped me find something that was going on in my body from an injury. And that part of my body had basically shut down because of that injury, and it wasn't reproducing in that area as it should. And you all have to notice some of these things. And I know you'll say, oh, my limbs working, my arm and all this stuff, but it was certain parts of my body that when he brought me in for my test, and it was like, wow, no, something that's not at the level, the peak level that it should have been. And I wasn't in the over 50 category then, you know what I mean? But it had come from an injury. Okay. So let me share. So you heard me say one of the main things, it wasn't just age, all right, or the sedentary lifestyle. Then we took into account the diet or the lack of nutrition that was getting to my cells. But the key thing was the stressors. And a lot of times we go through life and we don't realize how stress is packing on and causing us damage. You heard him. He talked about the environment and things like that. And these are things that we can't control a lot of times, but we have to learn how to notice it. So I'm going to share with you right now 4 considerations for healing your emotional charge. And they are the acidic cellular environments, the biomechanical misalignments, and and scar tissue. Was that for healing emotional charge? Yeah, acidic cellular environments and biomechanical alignments and scar tissue. So the one that I mentioned with you with Dr. Berg, that had to do with scar tissue, right? But it was a stressor to my body that my body had grown past. When you have a scar, the scar heals, right? And we think it's gone because you no longer see the scab, right? But the scar tissue still remains down under, and I'm getting off my subject. So let me share with you some of the stressors, and then I'll share with you the one that was impacting me. So some of the stressors can be, and the considerations that you need to think about for healing, how it's impacting you, and then the effect on the mitochondria, your cells, all the way down to the cell level, family. And this is why we say God made us so fearfully and wonderfully, because every little cell has an impact on all of our body. If you look in the mirror, you know that you're made up of cells. And every little cell, what did I say? Hundreds or even thousands impact the mitochondria, which was only one part of that cell that Dr. Berg just talked about, right? Only one part. But each part of that cell has a job, just like we do. Each one of us were created on this earth for a specific task, and we have to stay on that task for completion. Okay, so let me not go there. All right, so energy draining emotions. We were all like shocked, right? We were all like in a panic in a way because we didn't know what was going to happen, during that lockdown, during that time. So that was considered an emotional charge. And in order to heal, you need an emotional charge to pick you back up. But the effect on the mitochondria was it forces the mitochondria to produce energy that is wasted on muscle tension and nerve stimulation, excuse me. So therefore it's not able to impact the muscles, right? And it's not able to be relayed through the nerves as it would normally be. The process was, what do you call it when something is like cut off, or it was blocked? I'll just say that for lack of better words. The process was blocked. So it was stopped dead in its tracks. And we didn't know this because it's going on inside, right? It's going on inside that little cell. Then get a hold of this one. Poor posture. Family, you hear me? Poor posture. Looking into your biomedical misalignments. But again, back to the cell. Inhibit breathing capacity. You're slumped over. You're not breathing right. Okay? As a result, the delivery of oxygen to the mitochondria, essential for energy production, is a dam has been put in the way. If you're humped over or something is not right within your posture, a dam has been put in the way for the oxygen to pass over to replenish your cells. Come on, family. How about I just talked about old injuries and surgeries, scar tissue. It constricts blood flow to the cells because it's damaged. So again, the blood can't flow through, so it has to try to figure out a way around if there's a blockage. So limiting delivery of nutrients and oxygen is essential for mitochondrial energy production. So now your blood isn't getting through. I mean, just even think about a heart, right? When they talk about the plaque and the heart not beating the way that it should, or the blood and oxygen not getting through, it slows you down, right? You do not have the energy that you need to sometimes even sleep. When you think, oh, I'm not sleeping 8 hours. No, I'm up. I can't sleep. I'm laying there, but I can't sleep. Why? Because your body isn't able to replenish. When you're sleeping, that's your rest time. Your body is supposed to replenish. Then when you jump up in the morning, you're half cocked, right? Because you have not restored your body. Okay, next one. We'll talk about, oh my goodness, antacids, food preservatives, pesticides, herbicides, antibiotics, barbiturates. We taking all this medicine. Like he just said, we breathing all of this stuff in. Hydrocarbon, smoking, gas, car exhaust, come on, plastic, formaldehyde. Oh my goodness, heavy metals. A lot of us don't even believe that's real. When we go take the little thing to get the heavy metals out of us, people are like, what's that? Well, let's talk about the mercury in your body, the aluminum in your body, the lead in your body, the arsenic in your body, just to name a few. So therefore, it causes your acidic cellular environments to be off. So you got to get them back up. You got to get those metals out of you. But this causes a breakdown in the electron transport chain of the mitochondria where the ATP is assembled. The process is known as decoupling of the cytochrome complexes. And he just talked about the cytochrome, right? Well, it can't get through again It decouples it like you have a train, a train. The train is off the track. All right. So the train can't keep moving because it's off track, or the track has been derailed, for lack of, that's a better way to put it. The track has been derailed. Oh my goodness. Now let's talk about where we were. DNA, viral infections, trans fatty acids. Again, another acidic cellular environment where you need to straighten it up. You got to get your pH balance together, right? Get your balance together, because now you've caused, or these viral infections or the trans fatty acids have caused a breakdown again in the electron transport chain of the mitochondria, where the ATPs need to go. All right. So there's no assembly here. Can't put the track back on its course. Can't put the track back together. Now let's talk about alcohol. Oh, y'all gonna get mad at me with these last three, okay? But I have another film for you. So let me move past this so the doctor can tell you, not the ED doctor, but the medical doctor or even the scientist, okay? So alcohol. Alcohol, again, you got to put your body back on its proper acidic cellular, back in its proper environment. But the alcohol depletes the body of the essential B complex vitamins in order for the ATP to reproduce. All right. Now, this new one here, THC. Everybody's out here smoking. Everywhere you turn around, people smoking. I'm like, I even travel to other states and you smell it, right? Well, again, people, family, this causes a disruption of the TCA cycle and electron transport chain, leading to this diminished production of, again, the ATP. Now we're thinking, oh, I'm settling, working, dealing with my stress while I'm smoking, right? So the smoke is helping me, be in that euphoria and everything is calm. But when the high goes down, the stressor is still there, family. The alcohol or the marijuana, THC, whatever you want to do, when the high goes down, the stressor is still there and it comes right back to the brain. And now you have caused the malfunction in your cells. So the doctors are saying, now, how do you put your body back in order? Because you want to deal with what's right here in your face, right? And not thinking about the damage that you're doing within. Another one is fluoride. Okay. So this conveniently binds magnesium, rendering it unavailable for the glycolysis and the TCA cycle. Now I'm gonna have to look that one up, right? So bear with me because I want to get to where I was. Nutrition deficiencies, the hypothyroidism, and the adrenal fatigue. I said nutritional deficiency, right? Prevents various stages of the energy production process from working efficiently, leading to fatigue. So, I was not tired, and that may be because I was pushing myself and didn't realize it. Like, why am I doing this? Why am I getting sleepy during the day? And I'm just thinking because you're sitting around and you ain't doing nothing. You know what I mean? You're trying to read this stuff on your screen for work, but you're not moving, not realizing nutritional deficiency. Things have not been able to replenish in my cells to nourish my body the way that they should or the way that they would. Now, I may have been eating what I thought was good. I may have been even doing my the interval fasting, the intermittent fasting, you know what I mean? I may have been trying to go to sleep earlier, making sure I rest, but I was not moving my body. And that is so important. You can diet all day long. You can go on all the fancy diets you want to, or you can eat as healthy as you think you are. But if you do not rest and add the movement to it, family, you are still defeating. And in this case, we had, what did I say? I had the age up against me because I had turned another year, and I guess I crossed over a certain boundary that I didn't think about. You know what I mean? I'm like, I'm still feeling the same. This is the same body, right? It's aged another year. And for some reason, when I hit that target, some stuff in my body went womp, 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 womp. It's time to decrease some things, right? So my metabolism, my energy levels, and then the shock of the lockdown, all the stuff that we were going through, trying to keep the family together, trying to keep the, work together. What's going to happen tomorrow? What's going to happen next week? What's going to happen next month? Shucks. What's going to happen to us next year? Are your finances in order, Tiffany? Are you prepared for this? What you going to do if this happens? Blah, blah, blah. And you don't think that we were stressing? So what did that cause? It caused a breakdown. You can almost say a nervous breakdown, because my nerves within this thing started going haywire, and then my nutrition blockers were coming up. So it was not able to get to my cells the way that it needed to. Now, remember, I already told you I had the old injuries, right? So that was one blocker, constricting the blood flow to certain areas that I wasn't even aware about. Then to be told adrenal fatigue, and then to be told nutritional deficiencies. Who would know that by looking in the mirror? That's why I tell your family, and I can't stress it enough. Get your lab work. Talk to your doctor. Go get your lab work. And then if you don't trust your doctor to go over it with you, ask me. I may be able, if I can't go over it with you, I can possibly refer you to somebody. But look at your lab work. It is so important to know what is going on inside your body, because the one thing you don't want is to wait till you start getting that pain, because that pain or signs coming outwardly, pain is a signal to let you know that something is going wrong in your body. We don't just get pain for no reason. That is our body talking to us. So if it's a headache, if it is a throat ache, if it is a chest ache, if it is, oh my goodness, a stomach ache, you know what I mean? A cramp. Those things let you know that something is going wrong in your body, and you need to listen to your body, family. Hear me out. Listen to your body. Get your lab work. And I need to show this last video, and I forgot how long it is, so please forgive me. Let's go.
I'm going to make a bold prediction. You could watch this video 5 seconds after it's posted, and someone will already have commented, "The mitochondria is the powerhouse of the cell." It's pretty clear how these little organelles became a meme. It's got to be the most repeated line in biology and has been firmly inserted into our middle school textbooks for years. There's just something catchy to it. Side note, do powerhouses say they're the mitochondria of wherever? If you're in charge of the PR for a powerhouse anywhere in the world, DM us. That whole powerhouse nickname came from the mitochondria's energy production capabilities, but it's so much more than that. Today, we'll go over how this little powerhouse powers our cells, where it came from, and some new research that you probably didn't hear about back in your middle school textbook. You may remember some variation of this diagram, a classic animal cell with a little jelly bean-shaped organelle called the mitochondrion. Mitochondrion for singular, mitochondria for plural. That diagram is fine when you're learning the structures for the first time, but of course, a real-life cell is more complex. That little jelly bean shape is only one of the possible shapes a mitochondrion can take. What it looks like can be different from cell to cell. Plus, you don't just have a handful of mitochondria per cell, you have hundreds to thousands of them floating in your cells. And even that number depends on what type of tissue we're talking about. Like a skeletal muscle cell might be 3 to 8% mitochondria by volume, but a liver cell could be about 20%. Meanwhile, heart muscle cells are laughing at those numbers because they're about 35 to 40% mitochondria by volume. They win by a long shot. Now, all mitochondria do have some structural things in common. They each have two membranes, one outer layer, one inner layer, and some space in between them. That outer membrane works like a protective but permeable layer, letting different compounds in or out of the mitochondrion. Meanwhile, the inner membrane is where some important biology happens to manufacture ATP. This is the molecule that fuels our major biological processes, so it's often called energy currency. We're going to get more in depth on that whole ATP thing in the next video, but this inner layer, as well as the matrix within the mitochondria, is where the cells generate most of their ATP. Zooming back out to the mitochondrion as a whole, it looks almost like a separate cell in its own right. That's because at one point, it was. The most widely accepted theory of how we got these little guys is the endosymbiosis theory. Endo meaning into, symbiosis meaning living together. This word means that one cell engulfed another cell and it resulted in a mutually beneficial relationship. About 3.8 billion years ago, Earth's atmosphere didn't have oxygen in it, and the only things living on our planet were single-celled organisms that were anaerobic, meaning they didn't need oxygen to survive. Fast forward about 600 million years, and photosynthetic bacteria were everywhere, taking sunlight and a few other ingredients and cranking out oxygen as a byproduct. A few hundred million years later, those photosynthetic bacteria had produced so much oxygen that it fundamentally changed the composition of Earth's atmosphere. Here's the thing, oxygen was actually toxic to those anaerobic cells. It's so bizarre that something we need on a daily basis was so deadly back then. It's like if I found out that my ancestors were allergic to tacos. That meant that these anaerobic bacteria were at a huge disadvantage once the atmosphere was made of what was to them poison gas. By 2.5 billion years ago, a new type of bacteria started showing up in the fossil record. These bacteria were aerobic, meaning they could use oxygen, and it even helped them create energy. That is an excellent evolutionary advantage when the atmosphere is made of a gas you can use. The theory suggests that eventually, one of those anaerobic single-celled organisms consumed an aerobic purple bacteria that survived being eaten, and they kicked off a symbiotic relationship. That was the first mitochondria. That purple bacteria could consume and metabolize oxygen, which provided energy for the host cell, and in return, the host cell protected the bacteria. We still don't totally know the conditions around that moment of symbiosis, but we have fossil evidence of it starting about 1.5 billion years ago. The result of this ancient endosymbiosis is today's powerhouse of the cell. We kept mitochondria around to make energy for our cells. And since they were once their own separate organisms, they retained certain features of their past selves, one of which was their genetic information. Just like our larger cells, mitochondria need certain proteins to do their jobs, so they need genes to tell them what proteins to make. Our DNA, which makes up our genes, is kept in our cell's nucleus, what I'll call nuclear DNA for the rest of the episode. Some of our nuclear DNA makes proteins for the mitochondria, then ships them out for it to use. But the mitochondria also has its own DNA, separate from the DNA in your cell's nucleus. Plus, it has the cellular machinery to make new mitochondrial proteins, again, separate from the rest of your cell. This is the mitochondrial genome, or the entirety of its genetic information, and it's much smaller than the genome in the cell's nucleus. It's only a small circle with about 16,000 base pairs, while the nuclear genome has billions of base pairs. Now, the vast majority of proteins that get used by the mitochondria come from nuclear DNA, but that mitochondrial DNA lets us make some cool observations. Thanks to sexual reproduction, humans are genetic mishmashes of our parents. So you might expect that our mitochondrial DNA comes from our parents too. As a matter of fact, for a few reasons, we only inherit mitochondrial DNA from our mothers. When you were first developing in utero, most of the chromosomes from your biological parents recombine to form your chromosomes. This is part of what makes you physically different than your parents. But mitochondrial DNA, as well as the Y chromosome from your father, don't recombine, so they get used to study lineage. This kind of DNA does mutate, but it's otherwise well conserved, so the information in our mitochondria's genes are similar to our maternal ancestors way back in the past. Sequencing that mitochondrial DNA and comparing genomes has allowed researchers to trace people back to a single female ancestor in Africa thousands of years ago and follow human migration. Now, why does mitochondrial DNA only come from your mother? Good question. The first is that egg cells hold way more mitochondrial DNA than sperm cells. It's around 200,000 molecules in an egg cell and like single digits in sperm cells. Some estimates are a little higher, but the point remains, egg cells outnumber sperm by a lot when it comes to mitochondrial DNA. Plus, sperm store most of their mitochondria in their metabolically active tails. It does take a lot of energy to swim, after all. Now, aside from helping your cells make energy and providing clues about our ancestry, ongoing research is showing us some new features of our mitochondria. For example, research by scientists at the Salk Institute showed that mitochondria can kick off a series of events that signal the rest of the cell that it's under stress, the kind of chemical stress that can damage DNA. This phenomenon caught their attention when they observed how defective mitochondrial DNA caused the cell to eject the damaged mitochondria and actually send out a chemical warning signal that strengthens the cell's defenses. So they investigated what would happen if any of that DNA spilled out of the mitochondria and into the liquid around it. When they did, they saw that a certain set of genes were activated that usually activate when there's an invading virus. Awesome, that's exactly what we want our immune systems to do. Attack a virus when it detects one. Now, that same set of genes is also activated by chemotherapy-resistant cancer cells, specifically cancer that's resistant to doxorubicin, a chemotherapy drug that attacks nuclear DNA. When they studied this drug more closely, they found that it caused the release of mitochondrial DNA from the mitochondria, which activated a subset of those protective genes, which then protected the nuclear DNA. The point of this drug was to attack nuclear DNA, but when these genes were activated, it set up a pathway to defend the nuclear DNA, which explains why some cancers were resistant to this drug. The researchers took cancer cells and induced stress on their mitochondrial DNA, and as expected, they activated more of those genes and developed a resistance to doxorubicin afterwards. This research doesn't show that doxorubicin is a useless chemotherapy drug. It just explains why some cancers develop resistance to the drug. They think the purpose of that response is to protect the DNA in the cell's nucleus, making the mitochondria a warning signal that something bad is happening. They hope that if they can find a way to protect the mitochondrial DNA, they'll prevent that immune response within the cell and find more effective chemo treatments. So not only is our powerhouse of the cell effective in generating energy, it's got a fascinating backstory with clues to our past and to our future medical treatments. If you're wondering why we kind of glossed over the energy-generating aspects of the mitochondria, it's because we're saving it for later. Check out the next episode in the series to learn about how our cells generate energy. Yep, I'm going to try to teach y'all how ATP works without making you fall asleep from boredom. Wish me luck. I'm Patrick Kelly. Thanks for watching this episode of Seeker Human.
Wow. All right, family. So hopefully that gave you another aspect of what is so minute in our cells called mitochondria. Mitochondria, right? In plural, he said, for mitochondria. All right. So family, that's in a nutshell. We have to take care of our bodies because the things that happen to us impact us at the smallest point, and that is within our cells, our makeup. He went all the way back to our maternal side of the family, where our DNA structure comes from. So, family, take care of yourself. Go get your lab work. All righty. Yes, take care of yourself. Go get your lab work and ask questions. Do not be afraid to ask questions, all right? That's what the doctor is supposed to be there for. And if he rushes you off, then ask them to make an appointment for you specifically to go over your lab work and explain it to you. He's your doctor. He's working for you, okay? So again, and for the nutritional part, if they cannot refer you to a nutritionist, and I understand if you want to be plant-based or if you want to be holistic and they're not operating in that vibe there, then find somebody else. I mean, I can help you, or I can try to point you in the right direction. But this is your life, your body, your doctors. So something needs to come together. I will say, I'm not going to say namaste. That's where I was about to go, right? But you guys, hopefully I gave you enough information as we try to do. That is our objective, to make you more knowledgeable. And again, disclaimer, what may have worked for me may not work for you in the same exact way, because I didn't share with you all that I had to do to reverse what I was going through. I just pointed out to you some of the things that I was going through and what I was able to find out to make the corrections. So you think back to what you went through as to why you are where you are now, and let's start making the corrections. All right, family, have a wonderful day. It is live today, right? Live today. Why wait for tomorrow? Have a wonderful rest of the week. I'm out.
Better world, world. Mentally, physically, spiritually fit. Mentally,